Afternoon. Thank you for being with us today for our panel discussion, Tall Timbers, the heavy lift bringing the nation's tallest mass timber project to Cleveland. My name is Chris Urban. I'm the Director of Civic Engagement and Projects at the Greater Cleveland Partnership. We're really excited to have everyone with us to learn about this nationally significant project known as Intro, which is currently under construction at the corner of West 25th Street and Lorain Avenue in Ohio City, right across from the West Side Market. We have a great panel with us representing a variety of expertise related to this unique development and a lot to talk about and share. Before I turn it over to our moderator, Jade Davis, just one quick housekeeping item. Toward the end of today's discussion, we will have an opportunity for our panelists to answer a few questions that come in from the audience. At any time during the discussion, please feel free to submit questions you have in the questions panel, which should be located on the right side of your screen. We will try to get to as many as we can in the time that we have. With that, I will turn it over to Jade to introduce himself and our panel before diving into the discussion. Jade?
Hey, thank you, Chris. I'm Jade Davis. I'm Vice President of External Affairs here at the Port of Cleveland. And I want to welcome everyone joining us from around the world to Tall Timbers. And thank you for signing on, logging on, and hearing us talk about this transformative project right here in Cleveland. First, I want to introduce our panelists. Mark Bell, who is CEO and co-founder of Harbor Bay Real Estate Advisors, which is developer of the Intro project. Good morning, Mark.
Morning.
Dan Whalen, Vice President of Design and Development for Harbor Bay, and also from the Cleveland area originally, and he's overseeing the Intro project. And so good morning and welcome home, Dan.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having us.
Will Friedman, President and CEO of the Port of Cleveland, which is playing a major role in the Intro project as we're serving as the logistics hub for the project and connecting Northeast Ohio to Western Europe via the Atlantic Ocean, St. Lawrence Seaway, and Great Lakes. And from both financial and logistics standpoint, the Port of Cleveland is involved in this project. And good morning, Will, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning or good afternoon to everybody, no matter where you find yourself. Good to be with you.
And Helmut Spies, Managing Director of Vendor Host Mass Timber Solutions, and a family-owned company based in Austria and supplier of the mass timber for the Intro project. Good morning, good afternoon, Helmut, there in Europe.
Yeah, good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Good to be here.
Great to have you, and definitely with the time change, I'm glad we can all get on the same schedule here. So appreciate that. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. We have a lot to discuss on this project, so let's dive right into questions. First, Mark, Dan, when we look at the Intro project and the development formerly known as Market Square, it's received a lot of attention throughout Ohio and the U.S., especially given its mass timber and being the largest project of that scope here in the U.S. For those not familiar of it, could you provide us a summary of where and what Intro is, and also secondarily what distinguishes it from most other real estate developments in our region and the U.S.?
Sure. I'll jump in, and Dan, why don't you supplement? Intro is a mixed-use project at a critical intersection and corner of Cleveland and really Northeast Ohio. I'll let the Ohioans comment on location specifics, but in totality, it's got 298 apartments. It's got about 35,000 square feet of retail. It's got 2 levels of underground parking, and it also has a event space on the top of the structure. In addition, it's got about 1 acre of green park space that will be open to the public, as well as a great amenity to the residents. But the big topic and detail to note on the project is obviously it'll be the tallest mass timber structure once it's completed within the U.S. Note that I said U.S. There's taller buildings throughout the world, but I think the U.S. this is really going to be a tipping point where we're going to see a lot more mass timber projects in the United States, following the likes of Europe and Canada, as well as Australia. There's a lot of reasons why that we can get into, notably, obviously, the environmental benefits, carbon reductions of greenhouse gases, but also how does that project in that building interact with the consumer? Words like biophilia that the design community throws out there is really how nature interacts within a building to better the living environment for consumers. And so we couldn't be more excited at the opportunity to launch this project. It was a lot of time and effort and energy, and then obviously COVID hit. So we're very fortunate to be where we are, and we have thousands of people literally to thank for that, as there's so many people involved in this project.
I'll elaborate a little bit. I mean, when we started this project, it was all about how do we make it special and different and unique. And we were building a project up in Minnesota, and down the street there was a timber office building that had just been completed. And so we decided to tour that building, and when we were walking through it, it felt really special, just completely different than anything else we'd ever seen before in person. And so we started exploring it and went on this year-long adventure trying to determine how we could put mass timber to work and how we could utilize it, and learning all the intricacies of it. We got connected with Binderholz, and from there it's just kind of snowballed, and it became what you see on your screen today. And we're really excited. There's nothing like this in Cleveland, but truthfully in the Midwest or really east of the Mississippi in general. So in terms of the scale we've been able to bring here, and the things that we're going to do design-wise, they're going to be pretty much unrivaled, and we're really excited to have the partners we do in the Port of Cleveland and Binderholz, and I think people are really going to respond well once they see it come to life.
You know, the innovative nature of the project, I think, is something that is really intriguing, especially when you talk about, you know, here in the Midwest, sort of, you know, Cleveland was always known as the forest city when we, throughout our history here in Cleveland. And so to be able to, you know, sort of have this kind of sustainable resource here, I think is something that is really drawing the innovative minds and crowds. And, you know, this may not be the last project, but when we hear the term mass timber, Helmut, could you go in and talk about, you know, what mass timber is, and sort of, you know, what benefits that brings, you know, just sort of externality of the greater environment, but also, you know, what is Binderholz's role in this market as well?
Yeah, sure, Jade. The question about the benefits and the advantage of using mass timber, I think there are two main different benefits. One is the benefits that arrive on site on the project itself, not discussing about the sustainability of the product, but what we recognize all the time is all over the world, sites are running out of labor. This is a fact. So less and less labor is on site, and because of the high level of prefabrication on all the connectors and all the fixings and fastenings tools on the mass timber, it is a very fast solution, very easy to install, very speedful. On the other hand, very silent. We recognize it's also a very big advantage that mass timber sites are not so noisy, and it's less dust and dirt on site with mass timber. So this is just talking about the product itself, and not about the sustainable, all those sustainable facts that are running all around the world currently. And this is another very big advantage and benefit. The product is a renewable product. It arrives from the forest. And it's a natural product, therefore it's logical, it's an absolutely sustainable resource. And very important from our point of view is not only the discussion on carbon and that it is a carbon sink. When you work with mass timber, it is a stored solar energy. So in the end of the use of the product, you can heat the product, and the only thing that happens is that the CO2 that is stored, or the carbon that is stored in the product, is arriving back to the atmosphere. So it makes sense to reuse the material as long as possible. And if you construct the material in the right way, if you respect some rules on constructing in the right way with timber, you can use that material on different times of 100 years, and you can reuse it very, very often. And that makes sense when we're thinking about the urbanization that is running worldwide and using materials in urban areas. Let's say this urban mining would be a very, very important fact for the future. And therefore, we think it is, beside all those typical sustainable benefits, it is, and I'm pretty sure the way you build the intro building, you can rebuild the building in, I don't know, when the building is running out of the time to use it, you can rebuild and reuse the materials for another building. And that makes sense. That's a very, very big benefit from our point of view.
Gotcha. And when you talk about, mass timber, what people may fear is, okay, what about safety, specifically fire and things like that? And I know Dan and Mark, from a developer side, I know that's something that you're definitely thinking about. Could you go into explain, so the safety and mitigation that you feel that the project provide?
Safety on a product, I think we have to differ between what is the safety of the product itself. Is it an approved product? Are all the tests on structural behavior, fire behavior done? And the rest is discussing about the building, how to use the material safe in the building. So these are, from my point of view, very important two topics you have to differ. If we are just focusing on the material mass timber itself, and there we are discussing mainly on that project on the product's cross-laminated timber and the project's glue-laminated timber. Those two products are approved products, and they are structurally very stable. They are very robust materials, and all the mechanical data you need and the constructional data you need to calculate the building on the statics is fully given. On one hand. The second is the fire behavior. This is, I think, a topic that is quite often arriving when we are discussing about using mass timber, and not only in US, we are discussing those topics worldwide. There it is also very important to differ between what is the behavior of the product itself under fire, and there we are speaking about a so-called charring rate. So it's a combustible material. So when it is under fire, it is burning. But you can calculate very, very exactly, arriving from tests, how much millimeters of the inches of the product are burning in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So the structural engineer can calculate quite easily a 60-minute, 90-minute, 120-minute structural behavior of the product itself. And the rest is then using those figures and arriving in a structural concept of the building like you do it with any other constructional material like concrete, steel, or whatever. And this is the way you do a mass timber building. It's in the end an easy going as long as you work with approved materials. And for all the material we deliver here for our cross-laminated timber product, we have the ICC approval based on the BHG 320 from the year 2019. So it's a fully approved material with all those data. Yeah. Can't hear you.
Thank you for that thorough breakdown of that. So, I mean, it's one of them things that you sort of want to make sure you get out in front of, and make sure people understand. And just from with our public facing role of Port Authority, is something we definitely want to make sure that people have the totality of what the project is, and can understand its benefits and things like that, and also some of the mitigation and risk mitigation that's going to go into it. And so, speaking of sort of the public facing, Will Friedman, CEO of Port of Cleveland, The port, as you and I know, has played a significant role in the intro development. And could you go into specifically what the port's role is and how the support sort of serves as its economic development, as well as the maritime and logistics sort of beachhead for Northeast Ohio's economy?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Jade. I love talking about this project and appreciate a chance to be part of this panel. There's just so many good things about this project that I'm sure we're going to touch on. And for us, it's a unique project at the port because we were engaged with Harbor Bay, the developer, on the front end, on the financing of the project. For those who are listening in or watching us, you may or may not know that the Port Authority provides financing, bond financing for many real estate projects in our region, as we've done for this project. In addition, the timbers, which you just heard Helmut speaking about, which are being manufactured, fabricated in Austria and shipped here to the project site, are going to move by ocean-going vessel all the way into the Port of Cleveland through our port. You can see the map, which we've just shared, which indicates Port of Antwerp as the load port in Europe, and of course Port of Cleveland as our destination here for the product. And that's just really exciting for us. Having the opportunity to be involved with the financing of the project is great, but also seeing the building materials themselves shipped through the port is fantastic for us. So the first vessel is going to be due in port here in a matter of days with the first shipment of these timbers, and then they'll continue to be manufactured and moved here. So again, it's just a great opportunity for us. We're hoping that this can lead to further shipping business opportunities. I certainly concur that mass timber construction, I think, is an up and coming construction technique and material. And we're really happy to be part of introducing it on this sort of a scale to the U.S. and to North America. The site, it's also such a fantastic site and has a relationship to the port as well. For those of you who are familiar with Cleveland and geography here, Ohio City sits just on the west side of the Cuyahoga River, very close in neighborhood to downtown. Cuyahoga River is also our federal ship channel, so there's shipping very close by. Also very close to the site is a section of river frontage that we call Irishtown Bend, and the port's heavily involved in restoring Irishtown Bend and transforming it into a major public asset, a park hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years. That will be a great amenity for those who choose to live at Intro and the rest of Ohio City. The site itself is a transit-oriented site. There's transit close by. And just the density of this project, I think bringing this kind of density to Ohio City is the right direction for us here in Cleveland. So again, just lots of things that are just extremely commendable about the project.
Great, thank you, Will. Thank you for that sort of introduction for those that aren't aware of sort of the larger role that the Port of Cleveland plays. It's shipping, logistics, it's also finance, environmental role, and some of that is also dealing with sediments and keeping the ship channel open, but also physically cleaning Cleveland Harbor and keeping the place not only safe for shipping, but also for recreational boaters and kayakers and swimmers and things like that. And so we're sort of glad to play that role. And again, getting further in upland into Ohio City and being able to be a part of this project is a big, big part of Port of Cleveland's mission for those that aren't aware. Now, given that the pandemic and you know, as we go through 2020 and as we look into 2021 is on everyone's mind, can anyone on the panel speak to sort of the challenges it was to get to this point now, given the pandemic and you know how 2020 played out, with the fact that you know we're all doing this from homes, offices, and all these kind of things, rather than a panel we usually would have had all in person just 9 or 10 short months ago?
Sure, I'll start. We had a lot of hurdles at the front end of the project, you know, before we broke ground, but the least of which, or I'm sorry, not the least of which was trying to close our financing the week that the pandemic and all of the kind of stay-at-home orders came down in early March. So we pushed really hard with our partners, both on the financing side and the port and our banks and everyone involved to get financing closed so that we could actually start construction. We also obviously have consistent and constant communications with Vinderholt's team across the Atlantic Ocean, because obviously there's different rules and different reactions happening in Europe as it pertains to shutdowns and things of that nature. So we've been kind of tied at the hip and really focused on how to keep schedule moving forward. And luckily, for the most part, we've had very, very minor setbacks, if any at all, to this end. And the fact that the wood is on the boat and it's supposed to be here, I think, early or middle of next week for the first shipment is really going to be attributed to everyone's hard work, and it's a major success. The fact that we've been able to get to where we are at this point. Still a lot of work to go, but based on the last 6 or 7 months, to be where we are, we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. I think from our standpoint, we as a company culture, we really like to compete. We like to win. Sounds like an obvious statement to make, but I think that, you know, when things shift and things happen like a pandemic, not that we knew what the playbook was in a pandemic, but I think perseverance and resolve are some of the trademarks that we have to see from our teammates and team members and employees and whatnot. And so, and that was an extension, truthfully, from the state of Ohio via ODSA down to the city of Cleveland with the port, and the city being heavily involved, Ohio City as well, with Tom McNair and his team. So I think, you know, there was a rallying cry that needed to happen because we had spent so much time. It wasn't weeks, it wasn't months, but it was years in the making and getting this project ready to go. And so, you know, I think, you know, when we looked at all our projects across the country, I'll give a lot of compliment to the state of Ohio for its resolve, because as we know, there's not a perfect solution here, and there's a lot of different ways that various states are reacting to the pandemic. I'm not about to say, you know, what's right and what's wrong, but I think Governor DeWine down to the county, city levels, we saw a level of commitment and perseverance, you know, that was very appreciative to, as Dan mentioned, close and record the mortgage, number one, but then secondly, not skip a beat from a construction standpoint. So the laborers on that site, for those who are local, certainly drive by and take a look at them, because they're really kicking butt there, and it's great to see, and just great attitudes in general all around.
No, that's great. I could tell you this, it has been, you know, sort of refreshing to see, you know, so much of, you know, what we're doing here at the Port of Cleveland continue to operate. And we've been constantly sitting in meetings, trying to figure out how to continue to move forward with every aspect. Because again, there are people, the financing, the logistics, all those things equal jobs for a lot of people. And so equaling those jobs and making sure that we are working towards those things and getting to completion, I think has been something, a shared responsibility that we've taken as well. And so glad to work with partners like you guys in order to make sure that happens. Now, Helmut, with Binderholz being one of the top producers in the world of mass timber, I assume you receive a lot of questions about the use of timber as environmental impacts, and how is that handled in the European Union as far as approaching those concerns? And did you see any impact on, again, continuing to work in the U.S. market given those concerns?
Okay. First of all, here in Europe and within the European Union, it's like worldwide currently a big discussion running about how could we change anywhere, anyhow, construction business itself. It is not very sustainable construction business, and all of us, we know that there is less productivity in construction business on one hand. On the other hand, using timber, we always having the discussion from what resources is the timber arriving, from what forest is the timber arriving, and they are discussing about the organization of the Binderholz Group. The Binderholz Group is a highly vertical integrated company, so we are taking care on from a very sustainable deforestation. We are cutting most of the trees here, which are running to our sawmills with a Binderholz employee. And then we process the tree 100% in our sawmills and then in all the mills on mass timber. And with all the other parts of the tree you can't use material-wise for construction, we are running biofuel or producing biofuel products or running biomass power plants. So there you see we are fully interested, as you see on the slide here. We are operating based on the so-called no waste principle. So every single part of the tree is used and processed in our mills, and in the end we are arriving with the mass timber products and with very clever, sustainable and future-based mass timber solutions. This is arriving in the European Union quite a lot currently, this discussion. It is a very deep focus on how are the companies organized, what is the environmental impact of the products they are producing. We are discussing a lot in Europe about the so-called environmental product declarations. And some countries in Europe, they start to figure out quite a lot using more and more products who have a very, very positive so-called EPD. And we think that North America is quite a lot focusing on that topic or on those topics too. And as you probably know, we as a Binderholz Group, we have started to be active as a US company, and exactly this idea, as we are running our whole vertically integrated company here in Europe, we are ready to implement exactly the same idea to the US market, from the forest to the sawmill, from the sawmill to the product, and from the product to a mass timber solution, and closing closing up this CO2 circle within the products. That's the idea we are following up, and yeah.
And Jade, I'll say one thing about Binderholz too, is we toured other sawmills and other factories here, in North America, and no one across the board was doing what these guys are doing in terms of using every last bit of wood and finding a use for it, right? And it was something that we said, okay, like, this is unique, this is different, it's going to help us tell the story in terms of the larger, carbon reduction impact as we push forward in, attacking this market, and changing, our corporate mentality in terms of, I think moving forward, we're going to build, if not exclusively out of timber, then darn close to it. We're looking at other projects in other markets, and this whole story, the kind of thing you're seeing on screen here, and how it trickles into the project level and on into the actual environment and the units that folks are going to live in the buildings that we're building, it starts to really tell a story that sustainability wise and for the long term of improving cities, we want to be a part of, we want to be in the leading edge of, and we think Binderholz is already out in front of us on that for sure. And so that's part of how the marriage between us came to be.
No, that's great. And again, the sustainability and using every part of the tree we know is going to be critical for, again, continuing to power through with, sustainable construction options as well, going forward in the future. And so before we get to audience questions, I have one more, and I would like, Will to go a little bit more in depth on this. The Cleveland to Europe Express and sort of the Port of Cleveland's ability to ship directly to and from Europe. Can you discuss, that aspect of the Port of Cleveland and, why you think that is so critical to this project and the other projects in Northeast Ohio?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Jade. And sort of as a segue into that, let me just add a couple comments on the sustainability of this project and of mass timber as a construction material. There's nothing more important right now. I think getting on my soapbox a little bit, we have to figure out how to decarbonize globally as fast as possible. And I think sort of closed loop that you see depicted here that Binderholz has achieved with this product is fantastic, and another reason we're so happy to be a part of this project. So you mentioned the Cleveland Europe Express, and maybe we throw the slide back up that has the routing on it from Europe into Cleveland. That's kind of our marquee service. The port started the service 7 years ago, and the idea was to put in place a scheduled or so-called liner service between Europe, a reliable service that runs on a schedule for containerized goods, as well as in this case with the timbers, non-containerized cargoes as well. There's nothing like it. It's one of a kind, and it's also a more sustainable routing into the heartland of North America, because you can move product, move very large quantities of cargo all the way to Cleveland into the heartland, and you do not need to transfer to truck or rail on the East Coast of the US, which is a higher carbon footprint mode of transportation. So we think that aspect is going to be more and more important. It's also competitive in terms of transit time. That may seem counterintuitive, but believe it or not, we consistently beat door-to-door transit times compared to East Coast ports as well. You avoid all the congestion of those large ports, and you can get that ship all the way in. And so we continue to promote the use of this service. We're one of the reasons we're so pleased to be able to be a solution for this project. Use the word project, and in our business we call this project cargo aptly, and there's a lot more of it out there. It's not just construction projects, but infrastructure projects, moving large pieces of equipment around the world. And when you can keep these very, very massive types of cargoes on board a ship and get it closer to its destination, then that just saves a lot of money. And again, there's a sustainability benefit as well. So our port is very well equipped for handling project cargo, and we hope to do much more of this down the road. And it probably makes sense for these sorts of forestry practices and what Binderholz is doing to occur here in the United States. We certainly can grow plenty of trees in North America, and we think that's probably going to be the solution moving forward. But until then, we're ready to handle more of this product if we can.
Great, thanks, Will, for highlighting that and sort of giving people a visual of, number one, you'll be shocked. I know a lot of people listening to this will be shocked by how many times we host people at the port who may have never been to Cleveland or even to the Great Lakes in general, and they look out at Lake Erie and they're like, "Oh, that's Lake Erie. I was expecting more like a pond. I was expecting more like a large river." And it's like, no, this is a major international body of water with a direct connection to the Atlantic Ocean. And so we're glad to sort of utilize our geographical advantage to the fullest for many of our projects here in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, I would just add, just quickly, Jade, if I could add that certainly Helmut and those from Europe are accustomed to much more intensive use of their inland waterways and as well as their coastal waterways for moving cargo. We have a lot of catching up to do here in the U.S. For a variety of reasons I won't go into. We underutilize our waterways like the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Great Lakes and others. And again, if we're going to figure out how to decarbonize, if we're going to reduce congestion, if we're going to eliminate the need to build, more highways out of concrete, replace bridges, we're going to have to use our waterways in a more smart fashion. And again, I think this is a great example of doing that.
Well, I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience that's in our chat here. And one of them, and again, with any of these questions, any of you guys feel free to jump in and answer. This one is about labor and what are the unique labor expertise required for this type of construction, and how much of that is a barrier to availability of this expertise, i.e. is it, you guys find it hard to find the kind of skilled labor that can do these things, do this kind of work, in general? So anyone can answer that.
Yeah, Dan, just jump in after me, but I think in general, the construction industry is an industry that generally does not do well in pushing the bounds of innovation. People like familiarity with product and construction methodology. So introducing a new methodology that would be different, for instance, than traditional steel and concrete, I think naturally gives some anxiety and apprehension to laborers, and that can be difficult in trying to provide accurate and competitive pricing when the job gets bid. The way around that, quite frankly, is just a very thorough job of educating the subcontractors. It is, as Helmut mentioned, a lot safer, a lot quicker. There's a lot of advantages to it, but again, it starts with communication to the subcontractor community, particularly on the structural and the MEP fronts, to make sure all the laborers understand the product, and that will be reflective in the bids that they provide, ultimately allowing the project to be financed and be competitive.
Well, yeah, and generally speaking, if we were to boil this down and compare it to other types of construction, it's fairly simple, right? It's posts and beams and floorboards, and they get screwed or bolted together. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but for the most part, it's something that the carpenters are catching on to pretty quickly. There's carpenters from Cleveland. There's people here in Chicago going out to these training centers to learn how to piece together mass timber structures, because it is going to take off here in the States even more than it has already. So I think from a 10,000 foot level, it's not too technically advanced in terms of its piecing together, that it can't be learned quickly. And secondly, when you talk about it versus other types of construction, I think the team that's going to be erecting the timber for our project is roughly 10 to 12 people. If you were to compare that to a similar size concrete structure, you'd probably have to have 6 to 10 times the amount of bodies on site every day. So just in terms of the sheer traffic on site and the cleanliness on site and the amount of moving parts, I think it's a much simpler endeavor than it would be otherwise. And it's just another thing that as we see this come together, we're going to continue to learn on. We've used other projects as case studies, and I'm sure Helmut could speak to how his product gets put together. But just from the outside looking in on the developer standpoint, that's the way we've seen it and are anticipating the process to go.
Great. How many cubic meters of wood will be used in the intro project? That's something that we've gotten about three questions around just the amount of wood that people are interested in.
Helmut, do you have that number offhand? Because the conversion is still off in my mind.
We are talking on the whole project, we are talking on approximately 8,000, 9,000 cubic meters of wood using in that project, with mainly these glulam post and beams and the cross-laminated timber slabs. So that's the volume that's constructed in this project. So it's a really huge project, fantastic project. But as Dan said, in the end, constructionally, to build the project, and also as Mark said, it's completely correct. In the end, it's always the same way to connect the pieces together. We can prefab quite a lot of connectors here in Europe, especially into the glulam pieces, and then it is finally an easy going to connect it. And by the way, we have the same situation like you have in US. We have these traditionally trained carpenters, mainly here in the German-speaking part of Europe, so in Germany and in Austria, a bit in Switzerland. And the rest of Europe, we have exactly the same contracting business established like you have in US. And we started with, within the Binderholz Group, with a training program for joiners, let's say, to train them joining mass timber buildings in a correct way together. And you don't need to be a super highly trained and educated carpenter to install a building like this. Let's say the quality of the building and the quality of the assembly of the building is done in the office and not on site, because we work on building information modeling processes. We can work, the tolerances on mass timber is on millimeters, as you know, and it's not on centimeters like in concrete. So you decide in the end more the quality, how good are you in the training of the installers and the joiners, and how is the control on site managed, how do you control the installation. That is more winning the race of the quality of the installation instead of being a super high educated carpenter. And the company that will install this project is a highly educated and trained company, and I'm pretty sure that the whole installing of the building will run very, very positive and good. Yeah.
Great. And speaking on the construction side, we got a couple questions about, will this building be achieving any level of LEED certification as well? Can anyone speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are required to achieve LEED Silver, but at this point in time, we are striving for LEED Gold, and it looks like we're going to be able to hit that. And we don't believe through our research that there's any other LEED Gold certified buildings in Cleveland on the residential front. So we'll be the first of that. And then, there are elements of the LEED process that don't actually give you points or give you credit for going above and beyond in terms of, the carbon sink aspect of the building and the embodied carbon and the fact that the process by which the building gets built doesn't contribute nearly as much carbon into the atmosphere as other types. So, you know, when you talk about LEED Gold, it's great, and we're going to get there, and we're going to have an outstanding plaque and a building that people are proud to live on or live in, excuse me, and a healthy building that's it's clean, that's easy to manage, that you know, your electricity bills will be lower because your range and volatility and your energy usage are not as high, and there's, you know, on and on of some of the benefits. But I think we want to set out to learn a lot to make the next building even better. And as we continue to do this, we want this project to be a case study for many developers in other cities and public-private partnerships and everyone else who's looking to contribute to that story. You know, talking about LEED, sustainability, the whole thing. You know, the rules and the codes allow for relatively small timber structures without any challenges, but when you start going big like this and wanting to push the boundaries and verticality and square footage, you start to have more detailed discussions with your building officials and fire officials. And the only way that things are really going to start to make a dent nationally or globally are to build larger, denser, more vertical structures in this manner over time. And so we're really trying to lead the edge on that. And you know, we never set out to build the tallest in the country, but we did want to do something that was historic. You see the building right across the street from us. It's one of the most historic buildings in town, if not the most, in the West Side Market there. And hopefully 100 years from now, people are talking about this building in the same way that they talk about that one.
Hey, and speaking of, you know, the construction materials used, we're getting questions that folks want to know, is there any concrete or steel used at all, like, or even subflooring or things like that, that you can speak to in the project, or is this going to be completely timber?
Yeah, we have concrete. We do have 2 levels of underground parking, which required concrete. And then the connections that actually piece the timber together are fabricated in steel, and they're made locally in Cleveland. So Binderholtz and Seagate, our installer, have partnered with a local metal fabricator shop here. So that'll all be local. But you know, there are elements of the construction that do have the more traditional construction types, if you will, or you know, connections and structural concrete, things of that nature. But by and large, from floors 2 through 9 through the roof, this is an all wood building, and it's going to be really special. I don't think actually people outside of this phone call really get it yet. They'll start to get it once they see it being pieced together. But you know, we still are educating many people on what mass timber is and why it's unique, and that it's not 2x4s the same way that you'd build, you know, your house in the suburbs. And you're going to get to have exposed wood, and we've pushed really hard to get as much exposed timber into these units as possible, to the tune of 50 to 60% of the unit is going to be exposed in terms of its columns and ceilings. And you can kind of get a glimpse behind helmet for sort of the product. Binderholtz's product is extremely beautiful, architectural quality, very light looking spruce wood. And so his background will give you just a glimpse into the sort of product that we're going to have in these units, and just how unique it is in terms of what is exposed and what it looks like. So we're excited.
Great. And you know, this for this project, we have questions coming in about the diversity, equity, inclusion components of this project. And so, for example, a couple questions came in where people want to know, are subcontractors, or what are the goals for spending with diverse firms in this project, or is there going to be spaces for you know, local or diverse businesses within the commercial aspects of this project as well once construction is completed?
Sure, yeah. I feel like I'm hijacking the conversation now, but Mark can chime in as well, and Will. You know, as part of our partnership with the City of Cleveland, with the Port, we've committed to a number of inclusive programs, both on the labor front, you know, in terms of minority and women-owned businesses in the City of Cleveland, and making sure that everybody's at the very least hitting hurdles to to make sure that everybody's getting a shot to work on this project, to work in this project. One of the major aspects when you talk about how the building will operate and provide opportunities for those folks after construction is, we are at a transit hub here, and we made it very clear that that was one of the missions of the project, was to really harness the TOD nature of it. There's 9 bus routes that converge here. There's a major transit station in the top right of the corner of the screen. You can kind of see it poking up with almost 700,000 annual riders at that Ohio City Red Line station. Direct connectivity to downtown, to the airport, to the Cleveland Clinic, which is, as you know, one of the most major employer in the city of Cleveland. So when you talk about that and inclusion and opportunities for all the retail space here in the building and the jobs that we're going to be providing, restaurateurs that we've been talking to, they all say the same thing, is like being near the transit station is going to give our employees, who work in the back of house and who are service industry type folks, and when things finally turn around after COVID, it's going to give them an opportunity to get to work easily and be as close to the transit as they can possibly be in terms of getting to and from. So when you talk about the inclusion on the job and the labor and the companies that are actually building it, all the way through to when it's operating, and the retailers and the users that come into the project, I think it's got a really great story to tell on that front. And then you talk about the 1 acre of green space that we have, which is a community asset as opposed to just an asset for the residents of the building. We've worked really hard to try to create what will be a fabulous public space that kind of acts as the community gathering place. You see the West Side Market, but in Ohio City at this corner, I think there deserved to be something better that was a shared amenity for the whole community, and we're working on that as well. So I don't know if Mark has anything to elaborate on that, but.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. Obviously, I think that we're very proud of the labor aspect. Dave Wondolowski and the group of Northeast Ohio, from a labor perspective, the project is a full union project. So when we do our projects, we really pride ourselves on entering the markets in a very proactive sense early in the process, meeting through the different subcontractors, through the various divisions of construction, meeting obviously with Dave first, but then an extension of Dave into the different union halls and whatnot, is to really educate that labor force as to the project and create a win-win, right? I think that too often projects don't make it to the finish line because there's not good collaboration and front-end communication between development, engineering, design, and construction. And so, we tip our caps to the Cleveland labor market. Some great personalities on the site right now. We really end up forming and forging friendships in that regard. So I think there's a lot of great aspects to the labor. The other thing to note for people that are on the call that are not aware of this is the site is in an opportunity zone, and so there's a lot of subsets of this project, various narratives, but the opportunity zone, as championed by both the city, county, and the state from Governor DeWine down through the ODSA Director Lydia Mahalik and her team, this is a big deal, and I think development in opportunity zones in the right sense, making sure that we're being stewards of the land sites and making sure that we're trying to create something transformational. And that's what this mass timber really is. Because quite frankly, consider for a second that the tallest mass timber building is being built in the Rust Belt of America. This is not a Northwest type of scenario or narrative that Oregon and Washington and California, no offense to them, are latching onto. No, this is in Cleveland, Ohio. So I think the consumer base, from a livability standpoint, coupled with a workforce standpoint, how we recruit talent, I think consumer bases are being a lot more intelligent with where they're deciding to live, and they're demanding a lot. So I think it's to the responsibility of developers and cities and counties and states, coupled with engineers, architects, manufacturers, labor, to come up with really innovative stuff to recruit top talents. And I think that's what you're going to get with the intro project.
Great, great. And you know, I think I have one last question. And again, this is to anyone, but do you see this as the beginning, merely beginning of mass timber projects here in Cleveland and across the country? And again, you know, we're here in Cleveland, like you just said. This isn't happening in Seattle. It's not happening in New England. It's happening here in Cleveland. And you know, is our location going to be a forward-looking help to bring more projects like that here?
Yeah, we totally agree. I mean, I think that I'll give a shout out to Mr. Tom Vanover, the city building official in Cleveland. I think you're going to have code officials, truthfully, come in from across the country to look at this building. I think it's going to be a case study and a springboard for future projects. But I think the responsibility is really has to be shared, right? I mean, developers can push innovation, but I think cities and city officials and government leaders have to be receptive to that. They need to incentivize it, right? Because there is a period of nuances where it can be cost prohibitive until the market responds, right? And so we just need to be careful that we're building the right projects and not always taking the easy way out and some other construction types that might be easy to build or cheaper to build. But I think, you know, as Will was saying, what type of responsibility do we have from an environmental standpoint? We can't cure the problem, you know, one by one, but I think if we really start to look at this thing and the domino effect globally, and quite frankly, Europe, Canada, Australia, they're way ahead of the US on this particular subject. And so I think, you know, going back to Cleveland putting a stake in the ground and saying, hey, you know, let's look at this and use this as a case study, you know, for the likes of Columbus, Cincy, but then also throughout the Midwest and the country. I think that becomes the ultimate goal.
Great. Anything else any of our panelists like to add before we sign off? Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I thank all of our panelists for joining us from around the world and around the country. Again, we look forward to continuing to work with Harbor Bay on intro and the first ships with the first tall timbers will be arriving next week, and look out for that on our various social media platforms as well. And again, want to thank everyone for coming out. Thank the Greater Cleveland Partnership for putting this together. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the construction site. Have a great one.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. And thank you to our panelists and for everyone attending the webinar today. If you submitted a question to the panel that we weren't able to answer, we will do our best to connect you to answers from our panelists via email. We also invite you to visit the website you see on the screen to learn more about the organizations that were featured on the panel today. Again, to our panelists, echoing Jade's comments, you know, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and giving us an in-depth look at this incredible project. And thank you to all of our attendees. We hope you gained some great insight into this project and the public and private partners helping to make it happen. Thank you again, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you.